Welcome to week 7. We're now starting to get a great view of what's going on. The CFP poll doesn't come out for another couple of weeks, so we're using the AP poll for the purposes of trying to align who's going to be in the New Year's Day 6, who's going to go to the Citrus Bowl, and who's going to come into the pools in our 3 different conferences. So had a long conversation up in Nashville with the Music City Bowl. As you know, we have a partnership with them on the ACC and the Big Ten side, but we both have an SEC team. So we began looking at it very closely now, and we're starting to see some teams emerge. Clearly, Alabama and Auburn and Georgia seem to be the cream of the SEC as it stands right now. Kentucky, of course, is still 5-1, and they're playing into it. Conventional wisdom is you look at who's the favored team. So take each one of these teams' schedules and say, who do I believe will be favored? Not who do you want to win, but who should be favored. And that's the game we play. So if Florida is playing Texas A&M, who's going to be favored? If it's Texas A&M, then we say that Texas A&M is going to win the game. As you know, there's many upsets in college football, so that doesn't always hold true. And that's why each week as we go through the season, you will see me talking about different teams. Right now, though, we know that Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia in some form will play each other at the end of the year. Georgia plays Auburn, Auburn plays Alabama. If Georgia wins the East, and one would believe they would be favored to win the East, then Georgia would then play Alabama. Will that second place team or that loser of that team stay ranked high enough to be able to get in the New Year's Six? We truly believe that they will. So the bottom line here is now we're starting to focus on this, and the people that are emerging that will be on our list that more than likely will be potentially our teams. In this Western Division, it looks like LSU, Texas A&M will be the 2 teams that will be under consideration in the pool that we will be looking very closely at. They're yet to play each other. They'll play each other later on. So maybe you look at the winner of that game later on. On the eastern side, it's really beginning to emerge. It's clearly now going to be Florida or South Carolina. Those are the 2 teams that appear to be in our region, in our mix. Of course, those 2 teams have to get bowl eligible. And with Florida not playing one of the games, they're going to be 1 victory less because it was one of the teams that obviously they should have beaten. Right now they're 3-2. South Carolina's 4-2. Interestingly enough, they play each other late in the season, in the middle of November. Maybe perhaps we're looking at the winner of that game. So winner of this game, winner of that game, starting to see a little bit of focus on the SEC side. When you come over here to the ACC and the Big Ten, you look at it 2 different ways. If Penn State, Ohio State, Wisconsin are the 3 teams sort of at the top, Michigan State, then the next step down, they'll probably get 2 teams in, more than likely. In this scenario, Wisconsin will win the West. Will Penn State or Ohio State or Michigan State win the East? We'll watch that very carefully. Remember, we have had 2 Big Ten teams so far. This is the 4th year of a 6-year deal. We've had 2 Big Tens and 1 ACC. So it really kind of makes sense for us to look at this conference and think about this conference, but maybe not pick this conference. If Wisconsin were to fall down, then that would be somebody we'd be very interested in. And everybody's going to want a piece of Michigan. Both the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, all of us will really look closely at that. But if you say we should go ACC to balance this thing out, then you really start looking at the ACC very closely. You got Miami, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech, and they're all sitting up there. They're the ones competing for that division, the Coastal Division Championship. Somebody's going to fall out of that group. We obviously had Georgia Tech, so we can't have them back. Somebody else will have to take Georgia Tech. So we start focusing on Miami and Virginia Tech in the Coastal Division. And in the Atlantic Division, if you look at it, you've got Wake Forest, you've got a number of teams that are pretty good. Duke's still sitting up here at 4-2, but you got a number of pretty good teams. But it's clear now that these are the 2 best teams in that division. One of them will fall out. So NC State, really kind of funny sidebar. My first game here, they hired me in December as the executive director of the bowl. I had Florida, NC State in that game. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Florida State, can Florida State get bowl eligible? Clearly, if Florida State can get bowl eligible, they're going to be in our mix. Here's something that could happen, Gators and Noles. What happens if Florida State gets bowl eligible, Florida is bowl eligible, and it comes down to that rivalry weekend in November, and we're going to take the winner of that game. So that could flip the whole thing around the most. I just think that Florida State's not playing well, and they still have a long way to go. They still have to play Clemson. It's another loss. They're starting to run out of teams. You got to win, and they are also one game short on the win column because they lost that game to the Storm. So you start getting 4 or 5 losses, then you got to win all the rest of them. So that's a very interesting way it works in a pretty big dynamic. Let's take one quick look over here. So we've got in the All-State Sugar Bowl, we've got Clemson and TCU. In the Rose Bowl, which are the playoff bowls, we've got Alabama and Penn State, which means one of those 2 teams will play, and we're projecting right now that it would be another Clemson-Alabama national championship game. And then you start filling the slots. And of course, in our case, we showed Georgia getting in and going to the Peach Bowl, finishing second in the SEC. The Baby 5 conferences get somebody automatically in. The Peach Bowl has the last pick. San Diego State's what we're projecting right now. There's a number of teams down there that are close into that mix. Washington, Wisconsin. Orange Bowl is Miami, Ohio State. Here's the one that really throws a little bit of wrinkle into it. You got in the Citrus Bowl, Auburn, Notre Dame. The reason that Notre Dame is there is they're a part of the ACC. So if Notre Dame finishes 10-2 and is not a part of the New Year's Day 6, then there's a very good chance that the Orange Bowl would take them. If not, that's good because it sits them down to the Citrus Bowl, and that's a great pick for the Citrus Bowl, and I don't think that they would pass that at all. Obviously put them against Notre Dame, and then there's the TaxSlayer Bowl. Right now we're projecting NC State versus Florida. I think it's probably close to being something like that. I think Virginia Tech could go here also. So that's where we are this year. Now I wonder what all the other bowls around the country are thinking. Well, our partner in the Music City Bowl, he's hoping to get Kentucky, the team we had last year. Obviously that would bring a lot of people to his place, and he's looking over here, and Scott thinks that he's going to end up with Purdue. So he's looking at a Kentucky-Purdue game. We're looking at a Florida State, a South Carolina, or North Carolina State. That's where we are this week, but you know what? They still have a lot of games to play. We're exactly halfway, and we look forward to the next 7 weeks to figure out who will not only be playing for the national championship in the Final Four, but who's going to play in the TaxSlayer Bowl. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.